It is said the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan actually only lasted a couple months. It was securing the peace that took us over a decade to do. As this country closes the chapter on these two conflicts, the United States military finds itself in a perfect storm of fundamental change. And that change is powered by three stunning conclusions. The first is that today's and future battle space has changed forever. Second is that the United States military has been able to raise, sustain, and project an all-volunteer force into that battle space for years at a time. And third, and the most important, is the only way it's been able to do that is because of a heavy reliance upon women. Women who have deployed, women who stood next to warfighters, and women who became warfighters themselves. Over 250,000 women have gone into harm's way into Iraq and Afghanistan, and some have paid the ultimate price. Let me ask you something about these women warriors. How many of you think are patrolling the streets of Baghdad right now? Okay, that's a hard one. All right, flying over Kabul. No clue? Sailing on ships at sea, underway in the subs, or guarding embassies around the world? Anybody want to guess? You don't know. And you don't know because those of us with gray hair, and some of you with chemically altered gray hair, have normalized women in almost every career field within our military. Almost every career field within our military. And I would submit to you that it is the integration of women into our military that makes it one of the most respected institutes in this country, and I would argue around the world. It is because of women, not in spite of them, that we have such a high approval rating. And what is equally important is that women are needed within our military. What makes our military powerful is not our high-tech weapons, and we've got high-tech weapons. Matter of fact, they can take me out right here on this carpet. It's not our shiny uniforms, although we do look impressive, or the fact that we can actually march in parades on a good day. What makes the military a powerful fighting force is its ability to build teams. Think about it. We recruit from the microcosm of our society. Diverse people from all walks of life come together, and they come to the military. They join as individuals, and they serve as team members. Team members that are bonded so closely that one would lay down their life for another. There are few, if any, organizations in the world that can match that kind of bond. And Purple Hearts, thousands of Purple Hearts that have been awarded to both women and men, speak to that bond. How do we do it? How does the military build teams like that? Well, since I'm retired, I'm going to let you in on a little military secret. We do it the moment they enter basic training. And it is reinforced with the dreaded socks. Yes, you heard me right. Socks. But before I get into these babies, I want to refresh your mind for those of you who have not had the pleasure of going to one of our military basic trainings about what those carefree days are like. Well, let's just put it this way. The TIs, or the drill instructors, as we call them, aren't happy unless you're miserable. And that misery is done by drills and exercises and the dreaded smiling socks. Because let me tell you something, if these babies aren't lined up in your drawer like lifesavers and all smiling in the same direction, everybody's going to pay. They're going to tip over your drawer, pull out your socks, pull out your bunks, and everybody within the barracks is going to end up scrubbing the shower with a toothbrush. But what these simple socks does for you is it teaches you that the action of one matters to all. That the behavior one, the skill sets that one brings to the team matters to the whole team. It is the dedication, it is the commitment that matters not to the team, not the gender. And I will tell you from my 25 years of experience of being a pilot and a commander and a full colonel in the United States Air Force, women make for better teams and we make for better led teams. So maybe the talk of this title ought to be wanted more women warriors. So, why? Well, I'm going to give you 3 reasons why you want more women warriors. First of all, I just alluded to it. The battle space has changed forever. Yes, power and dominance are important if you're going to go to war, but for today's battle space and the future, just as important is the ability to have diplomacy, reconstruction. It is a multitasking space. Let me tell you something. American women today are multitasking machines. So the talents needed to secure peace sometimes better rely on women because you're working in the same block, the same street, the same village as other warfighters. Women make for better teams. But where do we get these women from? Where do we get talent to fill up our ranks? Well, I'm going to tell you about the only statistic I'll talk about today. In our United States military is an all-volunteer force, and it's going to remain that way for the foreseeable future. But only 1% will serve in uniformed service. 1% of this country serves in the military. But here's the deal. 51% of us are women. So if you want the best and the brightest, should you not recruit from that pool of 51%? Of course you should. If you want the best, if you want to solve America's domestic and international challenges, you want some of the bright minds to come and serve for you. And smart military leaders should know that this generation of young men and women get it. Why? Because they've grown up next to their co-ed, they've grown up on co-ed soccer teams together, right? They think it's no big deal they got a female sitting in an engineering class with them. They've seen their moms go off to work outside the homes in all kinds of traditional career fields, including running for vice president and president of the United States. And when my son would tell his buddies, my mama actually wears combat boots, you know what their reaction was? Ooh, ah. And oh, by the way, this generation gets it. Why? Because social media creates international perspective. But who are we going to get to lead these young men and women? Ah, herein lies the rub. Because the military is a closed personnel system. Everyone enters the bottom and must ascend up in rank. And if you're going to ascend in rank, you need, and probably are required, combat experience. But unlike the corporate world, who has learned that if they put a diverse leadership team around the boardroom table, it equates to better decisions and higher profit margins. Do we not want the best and the brightest sitting around our war room tables when we're making the critical and painful decision to send America's greatest resource, her sons and daughters, into harm's way? I would sure think so. There was another time in America's history when we did send America's sons and daughters into harm's way, and that was World War I. And following that war, it fundamentally changed this country for the better. In World War I, actually acted as a catalyst, pushing women into the nursing and the medical corps of this country. Why? There was a change of battle space, they needed the talents on the front, and they wanted diverse leaders. Following World War I, we saw the women's equality movement take flight, and this democracy is great because of that movement. What will be the lessons now 100 years later? We stand at the abyss of closing the chapter on 2 conflicts. What will we learn as a country about that? But before we answer that question, I'm going to leave you with a story, because you can never give a pilot a mic and not get a story out of her. So there I was. It was 2003, and we just won the war in Iraq. Mission accomplished. I was sent in with a senior leadership team to rebuild the country. We were there to build a sustaining democracy. And at that time in Iraq, we had the run of the whole country. We went to mosques, we went to marketplaces, and Iraqi homes. And if you visit an Iraqi home, they are very hospitable people. You'll be served a glass of warm, sweet tea. But in that part of the world, the men and women segregate. Men go to the front parlor, and the women disappear into the back. One afternoon, I found myself in an Iraqi apartment. As true to form, the men go to the front parlor, and I was torn. But if you want to build a sustaining democracy, whom had you better talk to? Women. So I followed her down, leaned in the kitchen doorway. I said, you speak English? Yes, I do. I said, tell me, what can I tell the male leadership team? What is it you need? What do you think your country needs. And she kind of sized me up and down. At the time, she had a little 9-year-old standing next to her, and she whips the kid around in front of her and puts these bear claws on her shoulder, and she says, "The children. At the time my daughter was 12 years old, yes, the children. Tell me, what can I do for you and the children?" She locks my eyes, leans in it, and with a long, drawn-out sigh, she says, "The children, get them back in school. They're driving me crazy." I said, "Honey, I hear you. In America in August, we are ready to drop-kick our kids out the front door." But what's really telling about that story? Who's the future of Iraq? That now 19-year-old girl that we hope is in Baghdad University, who's the future of this country? It resides in the hands of some of those 250,000 women who've seen that war can bring out the worst of humanity and war can bring out the best of humanity. So maybe the lesson for this century is that women are still critical to sustaining a lasting democracy. So maybe I'll tweak our slogan to read, "Wanted and needed more women warriors." Thank you very much.